Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar on improving students' academic help-seeking behaviors. Our presenter today is Keisha Brown of Perimeter College at Georgia State University. My name is Sidra, and I'll be your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, but if you have any questions throughout, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them. I'll now hand it over to our presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. So, as Sidra said, I am Keisha Lanier Brown, and I'm an associate professor of mathematics at Perimeter College. And I want to share with you the birth or the idea behind this particular project and to facilitate a conversation about what we can do in order to help our students. So this was started under Dr. Ursula Thomas, and she received a Summer Dean's Fellow grant at our institution in order to study equity practices at our university. So it was a group of 5 of us, and we used Tableau dashboards in order to review data from our institution, such as how students are performing in various classes. We also identified and mapped campus and college resources for students, and we all developed individual projects. For me, I was interested in seeing the DFW rates for students in math, and I was curious as to the services that we provide for our equity policies, but things like tutoring that students weren't actually attending. So I began my literature review, and one of the first studies was by Peters, and they said this study suggests that students who avoid seeking help think rationally when doing so. They employ a form of mental calculus to weigh up the learning benefits and psychological risks of seeking help. To increase help seeking, it is important to identify the promoting and restraining forces that explain students' behavior and to remove restraining forces that lead to help avoidance. So for me, I wanted to hear directly from the students what were their challenges in attending either office hours with their faculty members, or going to the tutoring center, or attending supplemental instruction sections. I developed a survey and I obtained IRB approval for it. And what you see here is the flyer that I posted around campus and distributed through the mathematics faculty members and asked them to put in their learning management systems. And I also emailed it to individual faculty members. So from January to October, I allowed students to complete the survey, and 151 students initially said that they would provide their insight. There were many questions that range from what is tutoring to you, or how do you think the interaction should play out in a tutorial session? And the third question was, did you attend tutorial? Why or why not? And this was tutorial in their mathematics classes. And they also indicated what math class they were referring to when answering these questions. So out of the 151 students who initially said they would complete the consent form, only 65 students answered this third question. So that leads me to think about, I wonder what they were thinking when they stopped. Was it the answers would have been no, and they felt concerned about actually answering that question? So those are some things I may want to follow up on in the future. But out of those 65 students who responded to the survey and answered the question, 35 of them said yes, they did attend tutorial for their mathematics class. And then I looked at their reasons for why they decided to attend tutorial. So 17 of the 35 said they wanted to learn, but there was an internal factor they identified. I didn't understand, or I missed class, or I needed help preparing for a test. There was one student that said an external factor, this class is hard. And there was one student that responded with a combination of the two. This class was hard, and I realized that I needed help. So for those who attended tutorial, they had to actually recognize that they needed the help, and they went to their instructors or the tutoring center in order to receive it. Out of those 65 students who chose not to attend, then 30 of them said they didn't attend. And these options that they had, it was a multiple selection. And the answer choices that I put there were things that were identified in the research as being factors as to why students typically don't go to tutoring. And then I also had an open box as well, where students could enter their own answer. So they could mark multiple answers. So some students may have duplicated their answers here. So 16 out of the 30 who said they did not attend tutorial for their class, they said they were already doing well. 5 said the times weren't convenient. 2 said they didn't have enough time to attend. 1 had a bad experience. 2 said they didn't know how to access it. And 5 said they didn't think it would be helpful. And 2, they didn't feel like attending, which is very honest as well. So here's my favorite favorite teaching meme. So I'll give you a second to read through it. So it's hilarious to me. I use it whenever I possibly can in presentations. But this is a disclaimer that even if we did implement all of these suggestions that the students provided, there's still going to be some students who choose not to attend. The way I look at it is, have I done everything that I can possibly do in order to reach out to my students to provide the assistance? And then I'm happy with that if I can do that. So the students, well, this is from an actual study by Abdul Wahab, and they were talking specifically about office hours. So their recommendations for getting students to attend office hours more is to tell students about the benefits. So academically, that's pretty intuitive about how going to talk to your instructor, getting assistance is going to help you, but also professionally. So helping students to understand that as a faculty member, when we know the students, we understand their perspectives and their thought process, we can write better letters of recommendation. We can probably give them more information if we know what they're interested in. Another suggestion was to schedule office hours based on students' availability. Now, I know that I schedule my office hours. I teach 7 a.m. classes. Yes, 7 a.m. And some people actually decide to do that to themselves. And I typically schedule office hours right after that. But when I think about how students create their schedules, they do the same thing. So I'm defeating the purpose of giving them a time to come seek help if we both have the same process of scheduling. Tell students what to expect. A lot of students' underlying thought processes are based in fear. So if you help them get beyond the fear of, I don't know what it's going to look like, I don't know what they're going to say, then that can help decrease some of the barriers that students have. Tell students about the specific topics you're going to discuss so that they don't have to worry about, well, what are we going to talk about? Do I have to bring all of my own questions? You can say, okay, at this particular section, I'm talking about sampling distributions. And then if students recognize they need help in that particular area, they may be more inclined to attend. Hold them in a place other than your office. So my office is located on the 3rd floor of a building where all the students stay on the 1st and 2nd floors. So perhaps if I go to the tutoring center where it's an open environment, or hold them in another area of the library, maybe students will feel less intimidated there. And be nicer. I didn't say it. This is the research. In this particular study, they said that faculty members' personalities affect students' impressions of them. And these impressions thereby affect the method by which students interact with faculty members. So I didn't say it. That was in the study. So here are the responses from the students who participated in the study when asked, what can faculty members do in order to help you be more inclined to attend tutoring, whether that's office hours or with supplemental instruction or in the tutoring center? So the students said they wanted faculty to connect with them directly. So most of us would say, oh, I do that. I send them an email, or I ask them to stay after class, or I give them a note to let them know, hey, I think tutoring would be beneficial for you. They said give incentives. Now, most faculty members would say, why would I incentivize you to do something that you should already do? And I completely understand. But I will also say, not everybody loves going to the gym. And we know it's good for us. We know it's going to help us. But what if there was an extra incentive to get us to come to the gym? Maybe if they gave us $5, that might not motivate some people. But just thinking about, okay, if our goal is to help students break down the wall of fear for asking for help, maybe this is something that will help counter that fear. Have tutors visit the classrooms. In my quantitative reasoning class, I've been trying this. I think this some places called a embedded tutoring. So I will lecture for about 20 minutes on the particular section, and then I allow students to work on some practice problems or homework problems. And then I have a tutor come in from the tutoring center so that number one, they can meet some of the tutors that are in the tutoring center. Number two, they can see what the process looks like for tutoring. And it's another way to help break down those barriers. Take your class to the tutoring center. So if students don't know where the tutoring center is, they don't understand what the process looks like, then this gives them an orientation to where they're going to be going and what the process looks like. Submit students for the supplemental instruction program. So if you've already had a student and they did very well, having other people who can vouch as tutors. So if I've had this particular instructor, they like things this particular way, then they have more of a personalized experience with you. Sympathize with your students. This is what they said. And have more office hours, to which we would say, well, students don't come to the ones that I do host. And once again, think about the timing of when office hours are available, or even perhaps maybe doing it online so students have a little more flexibility. And decrease lecture and increase Q&A time. So if students do have a very tight schedule and they really don't have enough time, perhaps leaving time in class so that they can ask their questions then and receive assistance, maybe that's a way to go as well. And reach out early and often. So these are the recommendations that they gave for the tutoring centers. They said to show students what to expect. And on the next slide, I'll show you an example that I found on YouTube that I thought was great. To advertise more. On the next slide, I will also show you what the building looks like on our campus where tutoring is housed. And then to think about when students are going to classes, are there any reminders around them that tutoring is available, where the tutoring is, what are the tutoring hours? How would students see that information in walking around campus? Have online tutoring. This one was scary because we do have online tutoring. So if students are saying this is a resource that they need, but they don't know it's available, then that's a mismatch. So we need to go back to that advertising piece of how do we make sure that all students are aware of the resources that are available to them. Don't talk down to students. They're fearful of their previous history in the courses, or just that internal understanding that they don't want to feel dumb. They don't want to look dumb. So how do we help them to grow without them feeling dumb, basically? Hire more tutors and have extended hours. So here is the video that I was referring to, and hopefully I shared my sound just so we can see a few minutes.
My name is Sarah, and I am a physics and math tutor here at Solano. I like to tutor because it provides a place for me to work on campus, which is really convenient, and also allows me to help other students while also retaining the information I've already learned.
My name's Larry Bartlow, and I tutor in anatomy and physiology, Bio 4 and Bio 5.
So I'll stop there, but what I wanted to, it doesn't want to stop. So I'll just go to the next slide and talk about it. But what I liked about that particular video was that they showed who the tutors were. They showed what the tutoring center looked like. They showed Larry actually teaching and the board that was in the back. So this helps students to see what is going to happen when they arrive at the tutoring center, and you see some of the people who are there. On the other picture here, that's the building where our tutoring center is. So there's nothing about that building that says this is where you come for tutoring. So this is the advertising piece to make sure that students know where the resources are and it's not hard for them. So I have some questions for you, and you can have some questions for me as well if you want to enter those into the Q&A. But my first question is, how can we reduce students' perception of the psychological risk? So in Peter's study, they said that Lewin first proposed that behavior was more likely to change when restraining forces were removed than when promoting forces were increased, because increasing promoting forces without reducing restraining ones leads to more tension. Also in that study, they said organizational research into psychological safety also provides evidence that people are more likely to speak up about problems, report errors, and ask for help when their concerns are negative, psychological, or interpersonal outcomes are addressed. So if you would share in the chat any ideas that you have about how we can reduce students' perception of psychological risk. That's a tough one. It is. One-on-one visits with students. I like it. Thank you, Jay. Other ideas about how we can reduce students' perception of psychological risk. A judgment-free zone. I like it. Peer tutors visit the classroom helps. They can speak from their own perspective. Absolutely. Make it sound like tutoring is for everyone and not a place to take care of all the people who are failing. Thank you, Clint. Excellent. I point out often humorously when I need help. Absolutely. And Jacob says, I like the video idea. Ooh, very large classes. And they never see any of my 6 TAs for help. I might have each TA make a short video introducing themselves and their office hours, welcoming students, and then post it in your Canvas site. I love that because it's breaking down that fear of, I don't know that person. I don't know how they're going to treat me. So at least it gives them a little motivation. Have special weeks for classes and promote and give prizes. Students said in those incentives, food, and I remember as a college student, food will motivate me to go almost anywhere. Bonus points, extra credit, a few points on a test. Tutoring office atmosphere should be pleasant and friendly, and frequently announce in a friendly tone that I'm here to help, no matter where you are stuck. Absolutely. On Zoom, office hours, change the title to student assistance hour. Vera, that's a very good point. We've gone back and forth with, okay, maybe students don't understand that terminology of office hours. So some professors use coffee and chat. Some of them say advising hours. So the wordplay could be helpful as well. Focus on working with students. Very good. We're using student engagement hours. I like that. Student hours, perfect. Okay, I have another question for you. Students' ability to recognize when they need help and to actively seek it are important self-regulated learning strategies. So how can we help our students recognize when they need help? I agree, Jay, that wording of office hours. So William had a great suggestion of student success hours, formative assessments in the classroom. Okay, Brian, that's a good way to help students self-regulate. Absolutely, Vera. So how can we help them to understand when they don't understand without it being associated with a grade?
We have a question. How do you deal with students who come to office hours just to ask you to do the whole homework for them? They come without looking at the assignment.
Well, I would be happy that they come. And to be perfectly honest, I think to me, the most important thing is for them to learn. And since homework for me is practice and I'm getting them to practice, I would love for them to come and ask me homework problems. And then I would have them talk to me more than I would talk to them. So I would ask them questions along the way in the problems so that they're still working, but at least the fear of, I don't know how to do this, I don't know where to start. So we can work together. So I would actually love for them to do that. Great question. Scaffolding, I think that's a great idea. Precursor for assignments with feedback, very low stakes, very good. Nina says she uses a Google Doc and lets everyone see their progress. As little pressure as possible, excellent. Clayton says beg. I think begging is good as well. Scott says when students come out of a lecture not knowing why the material in the lecture was important, this should be a clue that they need additional explanation. Many students don't learn well if they don't have a big picture perspective. And I think that's an excellent point, Scott. I'm a strange individual that I'm a big picture and a little picture kind of person. Like, I need you to explain what all of this means in the grand scheme of things. And then I need you to give me the details after that. And those two pieces together work very well. So in class, I try to do that same thing. Okay, here's the big picture. This is why we're doing this. And now let's do some examples to see how we get to that particular goal. Post a lot of practice problems and randomized practice tests that don't count for points. I like it, but they let students see how well they're understanding. Very good. Jay said scaffolding. And Paul said, let them know their average and how much work it will take to bring up their GPA. Excellent. And constantly ask, how does this concept apply to your life? To which most of my students would say, it doesn't. And then I have to go back and give them multiple examples of everything. Tap into emotions they may be experiencing in regards to the class. And if they mention they are not getting why or what is going on, it may lead them to understand why they need the help. Excellent point. And all of this does take time. You're absolutely right, Eileen. So how do we add this to the course? That's an excellent question. So for me, I try to, so that we have lots of boards in the room. So I'll just put one question on one side of the board, kind of like in a thought bubble. And it's very quick. And I would say, if this material is not making sense, here's where you go to get help. So I don't think it always has to be a very long and drawn out process, but I think the consistent reminders and then doing it in different ways helps students to make those connections. Emails also work, even though they may not check them. But there's a few that do check their email. And then also in the learning management system, there are certain settings that you can, we call them widgets. So we use D2L Brightspace. So you can have widgets that only come up for certain students. So if a student, say, scores less than a 30% on a quiz, I'm just giving an example, then you can put a special note on their particular screen so that when they log in, they see this note and not others. So that's another way that you can get the information to the students. It doesn't make them feel as though they're standing out from everyone else, but just to let them recognize, I'm seeing you, I'm watching your progress, and I want to help you be successful in this class. Catherine says a lot of free writing with her composition students, and I also ask them what they can do to make their assignment better. So they come into it with a game plan, and sometimes you have to be blunt. Dana, that is true. And tell them that they need extra help, but in the nicest way possible. Absolutely. So that kind of leads into that next question I have for you. How can we help students improve their self-efficacy? So self-efficacy beliefs might alter students' perception of the learning benefits and risks of seeking help. Self-efficacy is defined as the belief that one is capable of accomplishing specific tasks. Students high in self-efficacy might believe that by asking for help, they are likely to succeed and thus not feel embarrassed. Students low in self-efficacy, however, might believe that even if they ask for help, those 5 people out of the 30 who didn't go to tutorial, they will still fail. A student low in self-efficacy might therefore perceive help seeking as providing few benefits and significant risks, particularly if they believe failing after receiving extra help will portray them as dumb to the other students. So how do we manage making sure they're aware of their status, making sure they're aware that they need help, but at the same time, helping them to know that learning is possible. It's not something that is beyond their scope. And I think we have about 4 more minutes. So if you have any ideas of how we can help students improve their self-efficacy. Holly says, starting classes with a warm-up problem. So I have students engage in growth mindset tasks at the beginning of the semester and try to circle back to those ideas throughout the semester. I think that's a great idea, Clayton. So it's that continual process of growth. Vera said, I'm thinking of asking students that have used tutoring to speak to their class about their experiences. Great idea. Nina says, I usually give them an easy task that they will succeed at. And once they see that success, they're more willing to do more. Excellent. Adaptive homework. That's a good idea, Brian. So it works with them as they're learning. And Jay says, sometimes I start class with a fun question. Did you see the eclipse? Or what fun thing did you do? And I think that's Jay, that's important too in building that relationship, that environment where students feel safe. So I had some other questions, but we're about to be out of time. So think about later on, how can we normalize asking for help? How can we normalize making mistakes? Because many of these barriers that students have is about fear, about making mistakes, and not thinking that they are capable of completing this particular work and learning. So I will stop sharing the screen. So thank you very much for attending today. If you have any further questions, you can feel free to email me. That's perfectly fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending today. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat now for easy access. These free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational coursework company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance learning outcomes for you and your students, please visit hawkslearning.com, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you all for attending.